It was an age of magic and wonder, but nothing lasts forever. Not long before the end, by Larry Niven. Read by Karl. A swordsman battled a sorcerer once upon a time. In that age, such battles were frequent. A natural antipathy exists between swordsmen and sorcerers, as between cats and small birds, or between rats and men. Usually the swordsman lost, and humanity's average intelligence rose some trifling faction. Sometimes the swordsman won, and again the species was improved, for a sorcerer who cannot kill one miserable swordsman is a poor excuse for a sorcerer. But this battle differed from the others. On one side, the sword itself was enchanted. On the other, the sorcerer knew a great and terrible truth. We will call him the Warlock, as his name was both forgotten and impossible to pronounce. His parents had known what they were about. He who knows your name has power over you, but you must speak your name to use it. The Warlock had found his terrible truth in middle age. By that time he had travelled widely. It was not from choice. It was simply that he was a powerful magician, and he used his power when he needed friends. He knew spells to make people love a magician. The Warlock had tried these, but he did not like the side effects. So he commonly used his great power to help those around him, that they might love him without coercion. He found that when he had been 10 to 15 years in a place, using his magic as whim dictated, his powers were weakened. If he moved away, they returned. Twice he had had to move, and twice he had settled in a new land. Learning new customs, made new friends. It happened a third time. He prepared to move again, but something set him to wondering. Why should a man's powers be so unfairly drained out of him? It happened to nations, too. Throughout history, those lands which had been richest in magic had been overrun by barbarians carrying swords and clubs. It was a sad truth, and one that did not bear thinking about, but the Warlock's curiosity was strong. So he wondered, and he stayed to perform certain experiments. His last experiment involved a simple kinetic sorcery set to spin a metal disc in mid-air, and when that magic was done, he knew a truth he could never forget. So he departed. In succeeding decades he moved again and again. Time changed his personality, if not his body, and his magic became more dependable, if less showy. He discovered a great and terrible truth. If he kept it secret, it was through compassion. His truth spelled the end of civilization, yet it was of no earthly use to anyone. So he thought. But some 5 decades later, the date was in the order of 12,000 BC, it occurred to him that all truths find a use somewhere, sometime, and so he built another disk and recited spells over it, so that, like a telephone number already dialed but for one digit, the disk would be ready if he ever needed it. The name of the sword was Grendery. It was several hundred years old and quite famous. As for the swordsman, his name is no secret. It was Belhup Saddlestone Wordless Ag Mirklot Rule Coninson. His friends, who tended to be temporary, called him Hap. He was a barbarian, of course. A civilized man would have had more sense than to touch the sword, and better morals than to stab a sleeping woman, which was how Hap acquired his sword, or vice versa. The Warlock recognized it long before he saw it. He was at work in the cavern he had carved beneath the hill when an arm went off. The hair rose up, tingling on the back of his neck. "Visitors," he said. "I don't hear anything," said Charla, but there was an uneasiness to her tone. Charla was a girl of the village who had come to live with the Warlock. That day she had persuaded the Warlock to teach her some of his simpler spells. "Don't you feel the hair rising on the back of your neck?" "I set my arm to do that." "Let me just check." He used to sense her like a silver hula hoop set on edge. "There's trouble coming. We've got to get you out of here." "But," Charlotte waved protestingly at the table where they'd been working. "Oh, that. We can quit in the middle. That spell isn't dangerous." It was a charm against love spells, rather messy to work, but safe and tame and effective. The Warlock pointed to the spear of light glaring through the hoop center. "That's dangerous." And a nervously powerful focus of mana powers moving up the west side of the hill. You go down the east side. "Can I help? You taught me some magic." The magician laughed a little nervously. "Against that? Look at the size of the image, the color, the shape." "No. You got it here right now. The hill's clear on the eastern slope. Come with me." "I can't. Not with that sword loose. Not when it's already got hold of some idiot. There are obligations." They came out of the cavern together into the mansion they shared. Charlotte, still protesting, donned a robe and started down the hill. The warlock hastily selected an armful of paraphernalia and went outside. The intruder was halfway up the hill, a large but apparently human being carrying something long and glittering. He was still a quarter of an hour down the slope. The warlock set up the silver hula hoop and looked through it. The sword was aflame with miner's discharge, an eye-hurting needle of white light. That was the one, right enough. He knew of other equally more powerful manifoci, but none were portable, and none would show a sword to the unaided eye. He should have told Charlotte to inform the Brotherhood. She had that much magic. Too late now. There was no colored borderline to the Spear of Light. No green fringe meant no protective spells. The swordsman had not tried to guard himself against what he carried. Certainly the intruder was no magician, and he had not the intelligence to get the help of one. Did he know nothing about that sword? Nothing that would help the warlock. He who carried that sword was invulnerable to any power save the sword itself, or so it was said. Let's test that, said the warlock to himself. He adventured into his arm-woven equipment and came up with something wooden, shaped like an ocarina. He blew the dust off it, raised it in his fist, and pointed it down the mountain. But he hesitated. The loyalty spell was simple and safe, but it did have side effects. It lowered his victim's intelligence. Self-defense, the warlock reminded himself, and blew into the ocarina. The swordsman did not break stride. The sword didn't even glow and absorbed the spell that easily. In minutes, the swordsman would be here. The warlock hurriedly set up a simple prognostic spell. At least he can learn who could win the coming battle. No picture formed before him. Sinner did not even waver. Well now, said the warlock, well now. And he reached into his clutter of sorcerer's tools and found a metal disc. Another instant's rummaging produced a double-edged knife, profusely inscribed in no known language, and very sharp. Top of the warlock's sword was a spring, and the stream from that spring ran past the warlock's house. The swordsman stood leaning on his sword, facing the warlock across that stream. He breathed deeply, for it had been a hard climb. He was powerfully muscled and profusely scarred. To the warlock, it seemed strange that so young a man should have found time to acquire so many scars. But none of his wounds had impaired motor functions. The warlock had watched him coming up the hill. The swordsman was in top physical shape. His eyes were deep blue and brilliant, and half an inch too close together for the warlock's taste. I am Hap, he calls across the stream. Where is she? You mean Charlotte, of course. Why is that concerned? I have come to free her from her shameful bondage, old man. Too long have you... Hey, Charlotte's my wife. Too long have you used her for your vile and lecherous purposes. She says of her own free will, you nit. Do you expect me to believe that? A loveless woman as Charlotte, could she love an old and feeble warlock? Do I look feeble? The warlock did not look like an old man. He seemed Hap's age, some 20 years old, and his frame and his musculature were the equal of Hap's. He had not bothered to dress as he left the cavern. In place of Hap's scars, his back bore a tattoo in red and green and gold, an elaborately curly-cued pentagramic design, almost hypnotic in its extra-dimensional involutions. Everyone in the village knows your age, said Hap. You're 200 years old, if not more. Hap, said Warlock. Bellhop, something or other, Rue Coninson. Now I remember. Charlotte told me you tried to bother her last time she went to the village. Should have done something about that then. Old man, you lie. Charlotte is under a spell. Everybody knows the power of a warlock's loyalty spell. I don't use them. I don't like the side effects. He wants to be surrounded by friendly morons. The warlock pointed to the sword. Do you know what you carry? Hap nodded ominously. Then you want to know better. Maybe it's not too late. See if you can transfer it to your left hand. I tried that. I can't let go of it. Hap cut at the air restlessly with his 60-pound sword. I have to sleep with the damn thing clutched in my hand. Well, it's too late then. It's worth it, Ham said grimly. For now I can kill you. Too long has an innocent woman been subjected to your lecherous... I know. The warlock changed languages suddenly, speaking high and fast. He spoke thus for almost a minute, then switched back to standard. Do you feel any pain? Not a twinge, said Hap. He had not moved. He stood with a reckless sword at the ready. glowering at the magician across the stream. No sudden urge to travel? Attacks of remorse? Change of body temperature? But Hap is grinning now, not at all nicely. I thought, well, it had to be tried. There was an instant of blinding light. When it reached the vicinity of the hill, the meteorite had dwindled to the size of a baseball. It should have finished its journey at the back of Hap's head. Instead, it exploded a millisecond too soon. When the light died, Hap stood within a ring of craterlets. The swordsman's unsymmetrical jaw dropped, and he closed his mouth and started forward. The sword hummed faintly. The warlock turned his back. Hap curled his lip at the warlock's cowardice. Then he jumped 3 feet backward from a standing start. A shadow had pulled itself on the warlock's back. In a wooded cave with the sun shining in its mouth, a man shell on the wall might have looked at it sharp and black. The shadow dropped to the ground and stood up, a humanoid outline that was less a shape than a window view of the ultimate blackness beyond the death of the universe. Then it leapt. Gorendry seemed to move of its own accord. Hacked the demon once lengthwise and once across, while the demon seemed to batter against an invisible shield, trying to reach Hap even as it died. Clever, Hap panted. A panther on your back. A demon trapped inside. That's clever, said the warlock, but it didn't work. Carrying that so works, but it's not clever. Do I ask again, do you know what you carry? The most powerful sword ever forged. Hap raised the weapon high. His right arm was more heavily muscled than his left, and inches longer, as if the sword had been at work on it. Sword to make the equal of any warlock or sorceress, and without the help of demons either. I had to kill a woman who loved me to get it, but I paid that price gladly. When I have sent you to your just reward, Charlotte will come to me. She'll spit in your eye. Now will you listen to me? The sword is a demon. If you had an ounce of sense, you'd cut your arm off with the elbow. Hap looked startled. You mean there's a demon imprisoned in the metal? Get it through your head. There's no metal. It was a demon, a bound demon, and it's a parasite. It ages to death in a year unless you cut it loose. Warwick of the Northlands imprisoned in its present form. They gave it to one of his bastards, Jerry of something or other. Jerry conquered half this continent before he died on the battlefield of senile decay. It was given to the charge of the Rainbow Witch the year before I was born, because there never was a woman who had less use for people, especially men. That happens to have been untrue. Probably the sword's doing. Started to glance up again, did it? Should have guarded against that. A year, said Hap. 1 year. But the sword stirred restlessly in his hand. It will be a glorious year, said Hap, and he came forward. The warlock picked up a copper disc. 4, he said, and the disc spun in midair. By the time Hap had sloshed through the stream, the disc was a blur of motion. The warlock moved to keep it between himself and Hap Hap dared not touch it, for it would have sheared to anything at all. He crossed around it, but again the warlock had darted to the other side. In the pause he snatched out something else, a silvery knife, profusely inscribed. Whatever that is, said Hap, it can't hurt me. No magic can affect me while I carry this sword. True enough, said the warlock. The disc will lose its force in a minute anyway. In the meantime, I know a secret I would like to tell, one I can never tell to a friend. Hap raised the sword above his head and two-handed it swung it down on the disc. The sword stopped jarringly at the disc's rim. It's protecting you, said the warlock. If it hits the rim now, the recoil would knock you clear down to the village. Can't you hear the hum? Hap heard the whine as the disc cut the air. The tone was going up and down the scale. You're stalling, he said. That's true. So? Can it hurt you? No. You were saying you knew a secret. Hap braced himself, sword raised, and went outside the disc, which now glowed red at the edge. I wanted to tell someone for such a long time. 150 years. Even Charlotte doesn't know. The warlock still stood ready to run as if the swordsman should come after him. I know I learned magic in those days. Not much compared to what I know now, but big showy stuff. Castles floating in the air. Dragons with golden scales. Armies turned to stone and wiped out by lightning for simple death spells. Stuff like that takes a lot of power, you know. I've heard of such things. I did it all the time, for myself, for friends, for whoever I happened to be king, or whomever I happened to be in love with. I found out after I'd been settled for a while, the power would leave me. I had to move elsewhere to get it back. The copper disc glowed bright orange with the heat of its spin. Should have fragmented or melted long ago. Then there were the dead places. Places where a warlock dares not go. Places where magic doesn't work. They seem to be rural areas, farmlands and sheep ranges. You can find the old cities, the castles built to float which now lie tilted on their sides, the unnaturally aged bones of dragons, like huge lizards from another age. So I started wondering. Hep stepped back a bit from the heat of the disk. It glowed pure white now. It was like a sun brought to earth. So the glare, Hap had lost sight of the warlock. So I built a disk like this one and set it spinning. Just a simple kinetic sorcery with a constant acceleration and no limit point. You know what mana is? What's happening to your voice? Mana is the name we give to the power behind magic. Warlock's voice had gone weak and high. A horrible suspicion came to Hap. The warlock had slipped downhill, leaving his voice behind. Hap trotted around the disk, shading his eyes from its heat. An old man sat on the far side of the disk, his arthritic fingers, half crumpled with swollen joints, playing with a rune-inscribed knife. What I found out? Oh, there you are. Well, it's too late now. Hap raised his sword, and the sword changed. It was a massive red demon, horns and hooves, and its teeth were in Hap's right hand. It paused deliberately. For the few seconds it took Hap to realize what had happened and tried to jerk away. Then it bit down, and the swordsman's hand was off at the wrist. The demon reached out slowly enough, but Hap in surprise was unable to move. He felt the talon's fingers close his windpipe. He felt the strength leak out of the taloned hand, and he saw surprising dismay spread across the demon's face. The disc exploded. All at once and nothing first. It disintegrated into a flat cloud of metallic particles and was gone, flashing away as so much meteorite dust. The light was as lightning striking at one's feet. The sound was its thunder. The smell was vaporized copper. The demon faded as the chameleon faded against its background. Fading, the demon slipped to the ground in slow motion and faded for Zura was gone. When Hap reached out with his foot, he touched only dirt. Behind Hap was a trench of burnt earth. The spring had stopped. The rocky bottom of the stream was drying in the sun. The warlock's cavern had collapsed. The furnishing of the warlock's mansion had gone crashing into that vast pit, but the mansion itself was gone without trace. Hap clutched his messily severed wrist and he said, "But what happened?" "Mana," the warlock mumbled. He spat out a complete set of blackened teeth. "Mana. When I discovered that the power behind magic is a natural resource, like the fertility of the soil. When you use it up, it's gone. But can you see why I kept it a secret? One day all the wide world's mana will be used up. No more mana, no more magic. Do you know that Atlantis is tectonically unstable? Succeeding sorcerer kings renew the spells each generation to keep the whole continent from sliding into the sea. What happens when the spells don't work anymore? They couldn't possibly evacuate the whole continent at a time. Kinder not to let them know. But that disc? The warlock grinned with his empty mouth and ran his hands through snowy hair. All the hair came off in his fingers, leaving his scalp bare and muzzled. Senility is like being drunk. The disc? I told you. A kinetic sorcery with no upper limit. The disc keeps accelerating until all the mana in the locality has been used up. Hap moved a step forward. Shock had drained half his strength. His foot came down jarringly as if all the spring ran of his muscles. "You tried to kill me." The warlock nodded. "I figured if the disc didn't explode and kill you while you were trying to go around it, Gurinder would strangle you when the strait wore off. What are you complaining about? It cost you a hand, but you're free of it." Hap took another step and another. His hand was beginning to hurt, and the pain gave him strength. "Old man," he said thickly, 200 years old. "I can break your neck with the head you left me. And I will." The warlock raised the inscribed knife. "That won't work. No more magic." Hap slapped the warlock's hand away and took the warlock by his bloody throat. The warlock's hand brushed easily aside and came back and up. Hap wrapped his arms around his belly and backed away with his eyes and mouth wide open. He sat down hard. "A knife always works," said the warlock. "Oh," said Hap. "I worked a man myself with ordinary blacksmith tools, so the knife wouldn't crumble when the magic was gone. The runes aren't magic. They only say..." "Oh," said Hap. "Oh." He toppled sideways. The warlock lowered himself onto his back. He held the knife up and read the markings in a language only the Brotherhood remembered. "And this too shall pass away." It was a very old platitude, even then. dropped his arm back and lay looking at the sky. Presently, this blue was blotted by a shadow. Told you to get out of here, he whispered. You should have known better. What's happened to you? No more use spells. I knew I'd have to do it when the prognostic spell showed black. He drew a ragged breath. It was worth it. I killed Glendery. Playing heroes your age. What can I do? How can I help? Get me down the hill before my heart stops. Never told you my true age. I knew. The whole village knows. She pulled him to city position, pulled one of his arms around her neck, felt dead. She shuddered, but wrapped her own arm around his waist and get herself for the effort. You are so thin. Come on, love, we're going to stand up. She took most of his weight onto her and they stood up. Go slow. I can hear my heart trying to take off. How far do we have to go? Just to the foot of the hill, I think. Then the spells will work again and we can rest. He stumbled. I'm going blind, he said. It's a smooth path and all downhill. That's why I picked this place. I know I'd have to use the disc someday. You can't throw away knowledge. Always a time comes when you use it because you have to, because it's there. You've changed so ugly, and you smell. The pulse fluttered in his neck like a hummingbird's wings. Maybe you won't want me after seeing me like this. You can change back, can't you? Sure, I can change anything you like. What color eyes do you want? I'll be like this myself one day, she said. Her voice had cool horror. It was fading. He was going deaf. I'll teach you the proper spells when you're ready. They're dangerous. Blackly dangerous. She was silent for a time, then... What color were his eyes? You know, bellhop, sidlestone, whatever. Forget it, said the warlock with a touch of pique. And suddenly his sight was back. But not forever, thought the warlock as they stumbled through the sudden daylight. When the mana runs out, it'll go like a blown candle flame, and civilization will follow. No more magic-based industries. Then the whole world will be barbarian, until men learn a new way to coerce nature, and the swordsman, the damn stupid swordsman, will win after all. The end.